What is real and what is not? Welcome to Contact Confidential, where we explore the lines between reality and our stories. Hi, my name is Jerry. I'm a psychotherapist and producer of documentary-style podcasts that explore the magic and mystery of being human. On my show, Dragon's Bread, I explore contact stories, which include stories of believed encounters with UFOs and extraterrestrials. On this show, I talk to past guests as well as influential people about contact, and we explore the lines between where a story starts and reality begins. We will look at why our evidence for life beyond our planet isn't adding up, and explore the changes we may have to make to get a better understanding of what's really going on. So get comfortable, open your mind, and prepare to let go of your beliefs and assumptions. Because you are now being read into Contact Confidential. On today's episode, which is our first, we interview John Allen, the charismatic storyteller known as Mr. Baller. In full disclosure, John is a friend of mine and he's an advisor. We're both veterans and we got to know each other after some early interviews for a past show. And since then, I've been lucky enough to watch him ascend into the public limelight. I'm not interviewing John simply because of his popularity, which is evident in his 8 million plus and growing YouTube followers, but John, without question, has one of the more capable minds of anybody I've ever run across. He is a deep and critical thinker, which I think is a requirement to carry on any decent conversation about contact. So there you have it. This is a short one, but I think there's some good stuff here for you to chew on. I hope you enjoyed my interview with John Allen. John Allen.
Yeah.
All right, so you know I mix everything in post-production, so we can say whatever the fuck we want.
Nice.
Yeah, but before I want to do that, I was hoping to surprise attack you.
Yeah, okay.
Because whenever I produce anything around you, it's like 7 billion downloads of an episode. My skill set is producing content around around highly strange stories. Do you have a highly strange story you would like to share?
Oh man, like that is my own personal story or any story?
Yeah, let's just say for you, when you have officially walked into territory that for you feels highly strange. So, you know, like I produce content, you do too, around the supernatural.
Yeah.
But I produce content around all sorts of things, around people that get into deep psychological territory or deep questions, or, you know, sometimes it's on the ET narrative. Sometimes it's about ghosts. Sometimes it's about reality appeared to change around me and I didn't know exactly what was going on. So it could be any story that you want that actually happened, though.
You know, I don't have any. I'm sure if we did a little more prompting, I'm sure I could come up with something. But what immediately came into my mind was, since there has been, you know, more and more on the news about, you know, UFO sightings and the potential for alien life, and not to, this is a total like name drop, but it's relevant. So I've been in touch with Tom DeLonge from Blink-182.
What?
Yeah, he's like the guy who ultimately, you know, got the White House, got the government to come public with a number of those official, like, government documented unidentified flying objects. Like, Google it. Tom DeLonge, like lead singer of Blink-182.
Dude, yeah, I know who he is. To the Stars Academy.
Yeah. So as a result of speaking with him and then also just seeing it on the news play out, like shortly after he told me it would, I have been just thinking more and more about just like the reality of there being life outside of here. This is not a new concept for me. I've thought about it for ages and it's always fascinated me. But I guess now more than ever, I find myself daydreaming about putting aside the time and space issues of like getting to and from places, you know, in the universe. If there is life, let's say intelligent life somewhere outside of Earth, could be in our solar system or could be billions of light years away, like whether or not we ever have communication with them, or ever learn about them or anything, they exist right now. And if they have cities and villages and towns, and if they have culture, if they have events they go to, whatever it is they do, it's happening now. And it's like this weird concept if you really step back and you think about it, like all the things that we do day to day that make up our lives, like you would imagine with a developed society, they would have their own things that like kind of make their days and things they think about and worry about. But it's all happening like now, like independent of whether or not we can verify it. And then in addition to that, as an additional throw in of this concept is Neil deGrasse Tyson does this amazing thought experiment where, and I'm going to butcher it. I'll give you the summarized version. People ask him all the time, what do you think about life outside of Earth? And he's always very like, objective and doesn't weigh in too heavily about how he feels about it. But he's like, I think that people don't realize how egotistical like humans are. The ego is a big part of who we are. And whenever we think about life outside of Earth, there's this running assumption that we are either equal to the life outside of, or I should say the life outside of Earth is equal to us, different, but it's like us, the top of the food chain, or it's lesser than,
Mm-hmm.
like in terms of their, evolution or whatever. But he's like, when you're walking down the street, this is Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's like, when you're walking down the street and you see like an earthworm on the sidewalk, like that's life, it's on Earth. But do you think that you should stop and like have a conversation with the earthworm? Like, no, because like, there's no way you're going to interact with the earthworm. And he's like, chimpanzees, DNA, we're super close to chimpanzees, but similarly, we do not stop and talk to chimpanzees. We put them in cages at the fucking zoo and we stare at them in the zoo, and they're close to humans. He's like, what makes you believe that life outside of Earth, what if we are the earthworms? Or what if we're the chimpanzees to the life elsewhere? Like there shouldn't be this running assumption that like automatically we're really important in the eyes of this other life. We could be meaningless. We could be, oh, that's just like earthworms. Or we could even be like, oh, that's cute. They're like chimpanzees. We'll like round them up and put them in cages. And so people don't often go through that exercise. And so I think about life existing elsewhere, and it's like I can't conceptualize what it looks like, but it's also terrifying to think that we could be the earthworms or even lower than that, So not a story, but more of like a thought.
No, it's a great thought to start with because you represent, like when you pick out Neil deGrasse Tyson, a classically trained scientific mindset addressing the realities which we don't, the uncomfortable part of the reality we don't want to address. Maybe we're not that important. And I'm kind of like a nice bridge to this conversation because I speak to people that scientists don't consider. They don't consider their narratives because it goes outside their comfort zone, which is there's people that come to me with contact and they talk about lifelong contact with extraterrestrials. And it often doesn't look like what we imagine. It often turns into like the spiritual conversation about their evolution and growth. Like, why the hell is an ET species interested in me personally, my spiritual ascension and growth? So I hear, like, when I hear that, I hear the cultural divide. And for some reason around the ET narrative right now, we're not really comfortable addressing all the different parts of this narrative. Like, why are we not collecting? Why are people that come forward and say things like, here, I've actually shook hands with an ET and I've actually been on a spaceship, but my narrative is uncomfortable to you. Why is that not part of the scientific data that's being collected? And I would extend our bridge even further. I had an episode 4 months ago where I'm standing on an overlook after a long day of work. I see mostly couples every day, so it's like a lot to offload the negative content that you run into when you're trying to counsel couples. I'm standing there on this mountaintop eating a burrito, just trying to chill out, and a blue orb the size of 3 buses just appeared over my head.
What?
It seemed like, like the ultimate contradiction. Here I am producing content around these stories, and here I am having my own encounter myself.
Yeah, I think that people would be very quick to be like, you fabricated it in order to like have it fit your narrative. But that's the way people handle stuff like that.
Right. And I'm open to that. Like, I'm trained in psychology, right? This is what I do for my living every day for the majority of the time. and I'm aware of the relevance of the unconscious and the shadow and all that kind of stuff. I really do appreciate that skepticism. Like, I don't know what it is that I saw, but I do know that I saw something. And I realize that there's a deeper conversation here about the relationship to what one perceives in their own personal psychology and their mental health. Is this about a past trauma? I don't know. Is this about a deeper mental health issue? I really don't know. But I can tell you with clarity that what I saw in the sky was as real as anything else that I see in waking reality. And I think these questions extend onto popular culture too. I mean, if I'm addressing what I saw with honesty, I have to ask these questions, but I think society at large has to ask them too. Is, what we're seeing in the skies and what people are seeing with extraterrestrials uh, really rooted in a deeper conversation about collective trauma? I don't know. But I think, these conversations like you and I are having are important to talk about. And that's kind of what I'm exploring with my media. So, I guess what I'm bringing to you on this thought experiment is, why are we comfortable bringing some information in and leaving so much out?
I think that it has a lot to do with like fitting in society. I think that there are probably loads of people that have had, call it, traumatic experiences, which I think that not universally. I can't say I've spoken to loads of people that have had encounters, so I can't speak to what the kind of typical reaction to that would be. But I would imagine on some level, if you have had a meaningful or a substantive encounter of some kind, that's a traumatic event to a degree. Um, and I think that people, naturally would struggle to come forward with anything that kind of has trauma embedded in it because they likely can't fully understand it. There's also all these, taboos around like the type of people that talk about like, paranormal stuff as if it's true. It's like society is kind of divided in that way. There's like fake science and real science, and it's paranormal stuff falls into the fake science category if we're just talking at a very high level. That's how people tend to view it. That it's great for like subjects of movies and books and TV shows because it's great entertainment. But the idea that like it could be real, I think one, it would
Right.
it would completely upset the entirety of like humankind if it really was true. If there was like light, if there was a like way to prove clearly that there are other societies, other life elsewhere, it would absolutely destroy our sense of what it means to be on this planet, what it means to be human. I think that's a big deal, and I think that lots of people, the general society, they don't, it's like ignorance is bliss, I think. And I think that it's easier to dismiss and be critical of people that come forward with perhaps absolutely legitimate encounters, because the people that are listening to that, the general person, they're not ready for that. They know they're not ready for that. And so it's easier to follow the trend of saying, oh, that can't be true. But like there's this huge contradiction, which is like, for the people that go that route of like, well, that can't possibly be true, it's like, well, then how do you explain just the sheer size of the universe and why we are the only ones here? Like that in and of itself is like, it's a terrifying thing to think about. Like, why are we here if we are the only ones? Why? You know?
I think what you're saying is relational. I see this stuff in human relationships like daily. Here's a couple that's sitting down with me, that quote unquote couples expert. And I watch them do this, go around and around in a circle and go nowhere in therapy,
Mm,
right? For like 6 sessions. And the reason why they're not going anywhere in therapy is because they don't have the security to talk about something directly. Meaning, like, they do this, they avoid talking, they blame shift,
mm,
they talk around issues because they don't want to talk directly to something they're uncomfortable about, like saying like, hey, our sex life really sucks. Like,
yeah.
they're too insecure to do it. Right. So some of this has to do with like how insecure we actually feel when we look at the bigger picture, which, maybe I'll use this for the next shift in our conversation. Let's look at David Grush for a moment, former intelligence officer. Here we have actual people that have committed their life to service,
Mhm.
that are at high levels of government, that have been handed the authority to debrief presidents And yet when they step forward in the public light, what's happening? You see people that are being scapegoated as the problems themselves for talking about it. So what do you
Yep.
think this has to say about our society? Because it's happening on both sides. The government's doing it. The Pentagon turned around on David Grush and basically said he was unfit, pointing to his PTSD as a result of service, as some indication that perhaps he's mentally unfit and he's got it all wrong. Grush also recently came out and acknowledged he's high functioning autism. So there's the potential here the Pentagon's making a grander statement about whether or not they believe neurodivergents can accurately navigate and report their own realities, which is problematic considering the fact they're willing to make hires, but then completely take away their authority when it's convenient for them.
Mm.
And the mainstream media outlets are all trying to pick apart him personally versus look at what he's really trying to do, which was I'm taking the next step in terms of service to my country to communicate what the hell's actually going on. What do you think that has to say about where we're at?
I mean, in a way, it's like I don't think anybody's surprised that's happening. No matter what side of the aisle you sit on, no matter where you stand with regards to paranormal, extraterrestrial life, whatever. I don't think anybody's shocked that that's the way it's going, and it's because it's really part of like the human experience, unfortunately, which is like it kind of goes back to the beginning of this. Like the government or the powers that be, they're aware of like what would happen if this was made mainstream and everybody was like fully read in to like the true possibility of extraterrestrial life outside of ours that we don't have control over, that we don't know what they're up to, we don't know how we stack in their own kind of universal hierarchy. I mean, that's a terrifying concept. And I do think that, let's just say hypothetically, you and I are in control of the earth. Let's say you and I are in control. Is it better for us to fully educate the masses and say, yep, there's like this other thing going on, there could be life outside of earth that may or may not be coming here, that may or may not be studying us, we have no control over them? Or you can keep that in the dark and rely on like your experts internally to deal with that potential threat, deal with how you're going to potentially communicate, whatever. I mean, you're going to take the latter if your job is to be in charge. And so I kind of understand that there's absolutely going to be like smear campaigns and, like chopping people off at the knees, because unfortunately it's a little bit utilitarian, by the government being like, we're going to screw over these people, but it's in order to make sure the masses, who frankly they need to control, they need to keep them from being fully, I don't know, read up on what's actually going on. I mean, not to get deep into politics at all, but I mean, look at what happened with the pandemic, just the way information gets shared. Like, it was undeniable that we have this medical emergency happening. But like, look what happens when you have the ability to communicate constantly amongst everybody about what is or is not going on. It's like we became so unbelievably divided. And I just think that like if you install, hey, there's life outside of Earth. Well, maybe at first everyone's like, wow, like this is incredible. This is a moment in time for us. But how soon does it turn into a problem that like the powers that be will absolutely have to deal with? And it would conspiracy theories, people get mad about stuff, people like doing crazy stuff. I mean, like that's what happens with humanity at scale, because the vast majority of people are going to take like half thoughts and their emotions and go forth.
Yeah, we're two ex-military guys talking about this too. I think it's a very uncomfortable realization to look at the government's stance on this, because it's a reflection. It's like a mirror to provide how our quote unquote parental authorities are seeing us. It communicates, I think, to me personally, when I see this, it communicates that we still don't see people, we don't recognize their individual autonomy, and we don't trust each other yet. There's a conversation of distrust going on between authority and those that are participating in our system. So that's another conversation in itself.
I would agree with
Like the ET narrative, I think represents, if we're going to take a next step in expanding the narrative, like really revealing the evidence to the public, we also have to address the things that the government's not addressing with us. And that are these other people that have entirely different narratives around ET contact, that which I've explored through my stories on my side, which is they're often about evolution. They're often about growth. They're often about this. Hey, you're just a person on a planet that's waking up to the realization that you're in one galaxy that there's 100 billion planets on, and you're in a small galaxy in a universe that holds 2 trillion galaxies.
Yeah. As far as we know.
Yeah, as far as we know, as far as our telescopes can go, which is probably not even half of it.
Yeah. It'd be much bigger.
Yeah, so, that means we'll have to pick up the pieces and start bringing in narratives that run contrary to the way that we run things, which is really power and control oriented when you think about it.
Yeah. Agree. Definitely.
It's fear of losing control that could be behind this narrative.
Yes.
If you had one hope for all of this, like let's imagine, and I'll let you go after this because I know you got a very little time. Imagine this can all play out in a way that worked out perfectly for John Allen in terms of the ET narrative. What would you hope played out? What would you like to see?
The movie, what's the one with Matthew McConaughey? Interstellar. The scene where they go to the planet that's like all liquid. I forget what kind of liquid it is, and every minute is like 7 years or something like that. I loved just, even though it's obviously a movie, it's a fictionalized thing. Just it felt like such a real part of the movie where they're like, okay, we're touching down on like an alien planet, and the doors open, and it's like you see this. It's familiar, and that you see, you see air, you see liquid, but it's not. It's an alien planet, and then just seeing even the fictionalized version, but made out to look very real in the context of the movie. It, like, gave me chills to just like see this alien world. And so I think that, or another example would be like all those Mars rover images that get sent back. Like I look at all those images and just like stare at like these things that exist elsewhere, And so I think that in a perfect world for me, I would just want to literally just see a picture, a video, anything of another world. And I mean a world like with living things that are doing stuff in their world. I think that we can conceptualize and theorize about what is out there. But like going back to the very first thing I brought up, this notion of like putting aside which side you stand on, like let's just assume, just for the sake of argument's sake, that there really is life elsewhere that's culture, and they have families and whatever it is they do. Well, they're doing their lives, they're existing, they're doing whatever they do right now, whether or not we can ever interact with them. And I think that I'm just fascinated with this concept of like, just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it's not happening, So I want to see it. I want to, like, for once before I die, just like see another world. Like I want to have that interstellar moment of like, suddenly my whole life changes when I see this other world. And so I think that if we could have like live streams on all these planets, that would be great. see the other worlds, how they live. That would be like my perfect world. I'd just spend all day looking at cameras.
You wouldn't be working, John Allen, then you'd be in trouble because you got a lot of content to produce.
Yeah.
Thank you, John Allen, for spending some time with me. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. You good, man? Everything good in your life?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, no, I'm great. I just tell stories, and yeah, things are great. What about you, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Besides the UFO hanging over my head thing, that was like spun me pretty good for a few
When did
months.
that happen? That sounded pretty recent.
About 4 months ago. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So there was a
dude.
whole thing afterwards too. It wasn't just the sighting. There was a whole thing, like this information started to come forward, and like information on stuff I'd never thought about before, basically about the structure of life and patterns and the way humans evolve and organize. Stuff that I don't normally think about just started to come through, and I was journaling it. And
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it started a whole bunch of reflection on, am I okay? Like
Yeah.
what the fuck just happened there? But luckily enough, I'm in contact with a lot of pretty famous contactees. So I've talked through some of this stuff and I've gotten kind of grounded. But it was a pretty big, it was a pretty big deal, pretty big what the fuck moment. Yeah, I had to take a serious mental health pause to attend to my own care for a little while to kind of wrap my head around what happened. And I'm addressing my mental health care as part of this process. I think it's important.
It's interesting. And I had several meetings. We were talking about doing a show together at one point, which is a little bit in the works, but probably not. But either way, I had a chance to meet, I'm forgetting his name, but there was a guy who was a high-level CIA guy who was one of the people that like got in touch with to help work internally to get a lot of those documents and the footage released. So this guy's like a bona fide CIA operative turned like UFO side on the government who's now retired. And we had this call with him. This like is going to make it'll tie back to what you just said. So I have this first call with Tom and this guy, and Tom introduced me to him. And it was weird. Like the guy was trying to get a feel for me. He wasn't sure how much he was prepared to like share with me because he's just meeting me. But pretty quickly I was like, yeah, I cover these stories and it's fascinating for me. I like made it clear, like, hey man, I'm an ally here. Like I want to hear about paranormal stuff. I want to hear about this stuff. And he goes, this is going to sound crazy. And it's the thing that people that have experienced this will say they've had the same experience. But people that have not, oftentimes this changes their perception of me in the negative. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, he went to Skinwalker Ranch. He was part of the team that was investigating Skinwalker Ranch. Are you familiar with that story? Anyway, there's a ranch out in, I think, Nevada where there's loads of sightings out there. To the point where there was like a shadow government agency that actually bought it and studied it. And he was there for years studying. And he said he had one night where he was up on this hill. It actually is weirdly reminiscent of what you said. It was like an orb that appeared over his head. It was light, but it was like physical light that was moving around him. And he felt like it was being watched. But it was very quick and it disappeared. Now, other people that were there, along with friends and people in the CIA and in this world he's operating in, had described similar experiences. But the thing that happened to him that apparently is somewhat universal is that afterwards, he began having these like almost intrusive thoughts that weren't necessarily negative, but they were like things that he would never fucking ever have thought about. They were like coming into his head as if someone else was putting it there. And he said that there was a support group that he was a part of where it was people that were literally trying to describe what it's like to have had this like anomalous random encounter, let's say, that you can't really describe beyond calling it some lights near you or whatever. But then having like this parallel life happening. And he was like, it wrecks people's lives. He was like, there are people I know that it became so overwhelming that they like stopped being able to function in society. And he's like, something happens to people when they've had an encounter, like it affects the way you think. And some people have said that it's gotten to the point where they begin seeing numbers differently and they begin seeing letters differently. It's like, it's out of a movie almost, like your wiring has been altered.
Yep, I can relate. It's disorienting and destabilizing. All right, that's a wrap on our first episode of Contact Confidential. Thank you for listening. Thanks again to John Allen for sharing his time and his perspectives. You can find more about John at his YouTube channel, and you could just search Mr. Ballin. There you'll find links to his podcast, as well as to his other popular YouTube channels. If you'd like to stay up to date on upcoming guests, I'd suggest heading on over to the Patreon page at patreon.com/2earts. All right, thanks again for listening. Stay true in the meantime, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Dragon's Bread or Contact Confidential.